I'm getting phone calls. It was on a Wednesday night, and I thought something happened to a family member. I mean, they're blowing me up. So nonetheless, my middle brother, Chris, he had called and was like, Chad, we found Dad's car. And I mean, the sheer excitement that was going on. And I was like, all right, calm down, give me the information. I want to know exactly who, what, where, when, why, how. Ultimately, for me, for all of us, cars are incredibly impactful in our lives, right? I think that's pretty easy as a car guy, something that we learn pretty quick in life. So for me, a car that was incredibly impactful was my father's 69 Shelby, small block car, so 350. Ultimately, growing up, I'd spent a lot of time in the garage. I kind of considered myself daddy's boy for the most part. Forgive me, I do have two brothers, Chris and Brandon. But ultimately, whether it was car shows, detailing the vehicle, working on it, the impact that it had on me was pretty profound because it really directed where I went with my life as far as my career. Because I've been a big car guy. I'm in the auto industry in a multitude of roles at this point. It all stems really from that car. So my father had the car, I think he bought it, I want to say November of 75. So obviously that was going to be a little bit before I was born. And he had the vehicle for 39 years. So the impact that it had on us is ultimately, it really became a sister to us. At some point, I want to say I moved down here to the Atlanta area in November of 2000. Us being from Cherry Valley, Illinois, population about 2,000. Moving down here, anytime I talked to my father, that was always a question that was asked, hey, how's a Shelby doing? You catch up on your day-to-day stuff and hey, how's the car? My father had sold the car in 2014 and kind of lied to us about it, in essence. Ultimately the conversations, again, hey, how's it going? Have you had the Shelby out? Any car shows? What's been going on? It's fine, Chad. It's sitting in storage. So nonetheless, didn't really think a whole lot of it until one day in August of 2014. I do remember getting a call from my dad because I had a couple friends over. We're on the back patio. I'll never forget it. And ultimately, my dad was just like, Chad, I did something. I sold the Shelby. So after probably what seemed like 20 minutes of just sheer silence as I'm trying to process, the information that he's given me, I was, asking questions. Hey, who'd you sell it to? When'd you sell it? All of that. And at the time, he wasn't really forthcoming with that information. Hey, I sold it to a Shelby broker out of Indiana. And then I started asking when. Oh, it was a few months ago. So with the impact that this car had on our life, it was pretty upsetting, to say the least. It's, again, that sounds silly, but like people, cars are impactful. I know I've said that a few times. And, at this time, I'd spent a long time really just on the internet, not making a full court press to find it, but, it was important to me. I wanted to find out where the car was because growing up, I always found or felt like that was going to be my car one way or the other, whether I purchased it from, the family, however the case may be, it didn't matter. I just had it in my mind at a young age that was my car. As time goes on, ultimately, I think if I have my numbers right based on the Deluxe Marty, I think they made 7 Royal Maroon white interior 4-speed small block cars for that year. So the chances are if you find one, there's a good chance that could be it. So throughout all this time, could never find the car. And I can remember chatting with my youngest brother, Brandon, and just kind of talking to him about, hey, you know what? I either want to get a Shelby or a GT3. I know they're polar opposite vehicles, but that's really where my heart was. So after a little bit of chatting, I think which way we went. It was like, hey, you know what? Let's make a true full court press and let's find, Dad's old car. If you're going to get a Shelby, this is the only way to do it. And I, of course, agreed. So we spent a long time, really looking into a multitude of ways of trying to find the car and could never find it. And again, my two brothers are up in Northern Illinois, me being down here, we're going different avenues to try to find and locate the car. A couple days later, I'm getting phone calls. It was on a Wednesday night, and I thought something happened to a family member. I mean, they're blowing me up. So nonetheless, my middle brother, Chris, he had called and was like, Chad, we found Dad's car. And I mean, the sheer excitement that was going on. And I was like, all right, calm down, give me the information. I want to know exactly who, what, where, when, why, how. And lo and behold, they're sending me this information. It ended up being a third-party video at basically a restoration shop out in Arizona. And as they're, doing the full video of the car, obviously they're going to pull up the VIN plate, thankfully. At this time, I kind of left out. I'd remember what the VIN was. It was the last 4 digits. We'd happen to recall what those were, so it was going to be pretty easy to figure it out. With all that excitement, my youngest brother, Brandon, at this point, he's like, listen, I'm going to call that shop and see if we can get any information. So, and thankfully, even with all the privacy laws, this said shop was kind enough to provide the owner's email address, right? So this video that we found was from 2017. We're currently February 2020. And at this point, we get the email address the next day. And I just tell my brothers, I said, I got it from here. So as soon as I get to the office, the first thing I'm doing is I'm emailing this gentleman. I probably sat there for 30 minutes typing up a multitude of emails. And finally, you know, as I'm deleting these, I settle on a very basic 3-sentence email that I fired off to him. You know, ultimately knowing that the car was out in Arizona at this point, you know, I've got my phone sitting to my right, you know, and I'm just waiting and praying that I get a phone call or a response via email, whatever the case may be. It was about 4 hours after I'd sent the email, I'd received a phone call inbound from Arizona. So as soon as I saw it was Arizona, I was getting pretty excited. So I had to keep my calm, my composure there, and answer the phone professionally, because again, I was at work. And within about 45 seconds, I pretty much was pouring my heart out to this guy because I was very excited. I just recall going, Mitch, I really appreciate the call. You know, tell me about the car. How did you acquire it? And he was just a gentleman about it. And he was just like, you know, Chad, he's like, how do you know I have this car? And at that point, that's when just my heart started pouring it out to him and go, listen, hey, I've been looking for this car since 2014. It was my father's car. It was in the family for 39 years. And as he pauses and takes all that in, you know, he starts asking me some basic questions. I was like, listen, I'll tell you anything about that car. I know there's certain details I can give you. So as we continue and start our conversation, he starts to tell me some of the basics that he's done to the car. Obviously, at this point, based on the third-party video that we found, we knew that it went through a restoration. And I was like, listen, I'm going to make this real easy. You obviously had the car all apart. Well, there is a particular area of the vehicle that was damaged that you would never know about unless you pull it apart. So ultimately, if you have the front fenders off the vehicle, there's this bulbous structure component of the vehicle that was dented in. So I proceeded to tell him, I said, listen, I could tell you where there is a dent that you would never know about it unless you had the front clip off the car. And ultimately, I want to say in December of 75, so shortly after my father bought it, him and his buddy Butch stuck it through a fence there in Belvidere, Illinois. So I knew about that. And at that point in time, he was blown away because they remember looking at that, trying to figure out what had happened. So nonetheless, as we spend, 45 minutes chatting like a couple of 16-year-old schoolgirls, we're winding down the conversation. He goes, Chad, I feel guilty I even own this car. I have no intentions of selling it. I spent a long time looking for it. And I understood. And he's like, just make me an offer. And I go, Mitch, the reality is, based on everything that you've done to this car, it's unfortunately going to be out of my means. So as we continue to wind down, he goes, you know what, Chad? He goes, if you and your brothers ever want to come out and see the car, you're welcome to come out. I go, Mitch, you do not know who you're talking to. I said, the timing of this is perfect. Ironically, this is a couple days before I have vacation. So as I get off the phone with him, I call my brothers, and they both, Chris and Brandon, both say the same thing. When are we going? So nonetheless, this was a Thursday that I speak with Mitch. By Wednesday of next week, all three of us were in Scottsdale, Arizona to see the car, which was fantastic. As we take our journey, out to Scottsdale, we get there, again, just an absolute gentleman as far as, how he treated us, so respectful. And I think ultimately for him, again, because cars are so impactful, he kind of had a story about a car, so he felt, it really pulled at his heartstrings too. So he really obliged. He actually had the car staged for us in his large garage, and now we've got waterworks flying, right? He was great because, it's not many guys that are going to want to throw you keys for their car, right? So he's trying to throw us the keys to the car, and I just remember looking at him, with the emotions that are going through all three of us. I was like, Mitch, I really just want to go for a ride. That's all I want to do. And lo and behold, he obliged. He took us all for a ride, and it was fantastic. By the time we finished up, this was a kamikaze trip, so it was a one-day deal. And ultimately, he finally threw a number at me that, again, was beyond my means. But we had such a great conversation. I was like, listen, if there's ever a time that, you're going to market the car. Please, make sure I get the first right of refusal. So we leave. It was great. We loved it. We'd stayed in touch. So at this time, we were there in February as COVID's hitting. And then 2 months later, I'd reached out to him just to kind of touch base. Just to make sure he understood, hey, I want this car. I think about it every day. That's how bad I want this machine. We probably spent about an hour on the phone, and he'd actually was working with me on the price, which I really appreciated. And again, after this conversation, it was still beyond my financial means. I had a number that I felt that I could make happen, right? So we finished this conversation up, and I immediately called my brothers, because once this conversation ended, I kind of felt like that was the finality of, any type of negotiations with pricing. And so I called my brothers, and I'm emotionally upset at this point, calling them to tell them that, hey, unfortunately, I just don't think I can make this happen. Both of my brothers understood, Chris and Brandon, not that we were happy about it, but we understood. So, as I'm chatting with them, I said, guys, if another one ever comes available, my only option may be just to wait to find a similar car, another Royal Maroon white interior 4-speed car. Again, I want to say, based on Deluxe Marty, there's about 7 of them made. So I'd emotionally at that point made up my mind that, hey, when I see one and find one, it's a wrap. It's going to be in my garage. I'm just sitting there thinking, as I'm having a conversation with my brothers and my wife, who has also been amazingly supportive, and you'll find out why here in a moment. I just emotionally was like, I'm buying it as soon as we see one. And after all this time I'd been looking, I'd never really come across a small block car. You see a lot of the big block cars and automatics, but I was pretty specific about what I wanted. And I'm telling you, it was probably about 6 or 7 days later, after I had emotionally decided that, hey, if another Royal Maroon manual car comes available, it's going to be mine. So nonetheless, one became available down in Florida by happenstance. Again, every day we're thumbing, right? We're car guys. We're thumbing, we're looking for cars, and I about died when I saw the exact same car. Royal Maroon, white interior, 4-speed. I remember running to my wife. I go, well, apparently I do something with my voice and how I talk to her. She knows it's car related. And the question is, what's it going to cost us? So I show her, she's like, oh Lord, here we go. So I said, hey, listen, if this is a rust-free car, it's a wrap. I'm buying it. So the crazy thing was I couldn't get off work to go do it. So my brother Brandon was kind enough to fly down and kind of be my hands and eyes. So he actually, took the time to fly down to Orlando to check this car out. And lo and behold, he gets down there. We got it on the rack. We're checking out rust-free Texas car. Beautiful. I said, it's done. Tell him I want the car. Let's just get this, right? I get the car home. I'm happy as a clam. I legit have a little gathering at the house to kind of celebrate and party that, hey, I've got my Shelby. Part of my world's complete, right? This was April of 20. Come August, I get an email from Mitch, and it was a very brief email, and it was just, hey Chad, listen, I'm gonna market the car in a manual where, hey, I feel it's gonna sell, within 30 days. Are you still interested? I was really mixed on how I was emotionally feeling about this. Am I happy? Am I excited? Am I angry? Because again, I have my car. I'm happy. I've already kind of making some small changes to the car, to make it mine, if you will. Right away, I pick up the phone, because what I had done in the meantime is, once I bought this other Shelby that looks just like the one that he owns, I had sent him some photos. So come to find out, I pick up the phone, I call him, I said, hey Mitch, absolutely, I appreciate you reaching out to me. Did you not get those photos and text that I had sent you? And he's like, well, yeah, I just thought you were giving me some footage of, when your father owned the car. At that point, I just kind of die laughing, because I understand they look exactly the same. And he's like, I'm sorry. He's like, ultimately, had I known you bought one, I probably would have left you alone. And I'm like, no. I said, Mitch, you did the right thing. I was like, listen, let me follow up with you, the next day, because I was actually flying out of town to go see my family up north. And ultimately, him and I connected at the airport. And we chatted again for about another hour as I'm waiting for my flight. And he actually hit me at a number which would have been the absolute tip top of what I was prepared to do when we first connected in February. So at this point, I've got some money already tied up, in one car. And, ultimately I call my wife and I'm like, you are not going to believe who I just heard from. If it wasn't for her and my brothers, I don't know which way I would have gone, to deal with the stress, financially of, maneuvering a couple of cars like that, for me. But she ultimately was just like, Chad, if you feel, we can just make this happen as we sell the other car, you're gonna have to do this because I'm never gonna hear it for the rest of our lives together. I'm like, well, she's actually right. So, you know, I call him back. I said, listen, I'm gonna be out of town for the next 5 days. I'll call you as soon as I get back. And he's like, that's fine, Chad. I'm not gonna mark it. I'll wait for you. So lo and behold, you know, I proceed to purchase the car after I was gonna tell him no. I went to pick up the phone and call him, and in my head, I was like, I'm just not gonna do it. Hey, I've got it. It doesn't make any sense. I picked up the phone, call him. I go, Mitch, I'm gonna send you 10 grand. Let me figure out the rest. Just give me a couple of days. So nonetheless, I move forward with the car. So now at this point in time, I'm sitting there with two of the exact same cars, 0404 and 0683. I worked so hard to convince my wife to let me keep them both, because I think, you know what, a his and a hers. Who wouldn't want a his and hers? Who wouldn't? I worked about 8 months. And when I say 8 months, I think it was legitimate 8 months before it finally had to go away. My wife, as great as she is, she was not letting that happen. But so I ended up selling the other car, and I don't know for sure. I want to say it went out to North Carolina, but so nonetheless, I'm down to one, like a normal human being, I guess. But nonetheless, I tried to get 2, but it didn't work. Try to keep 2.
We'd like to thank the Ticket Clinic for supporting VINwiki this month. When you get a ticket, no matter where it happens, you're risking points on your license, costly fines, insurance premium increases, and risks of suspension or jail time. So it's more important than ever to have great representation. The Ticket Clinic is a nationwide law firm that can help you fight a ticket no matter where you get it. It's easier than ever to start a relationship with them. You'll just take your ticket, snap a picture of it, and text that picture to 305-305. You can also reach them at the link in the description below to thank them for their support of VINwiki and fight your ticket with the Ticket Clinic.